I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today we're talking about Final Frontier games. I don't have a script for where this is going to go. I mean, I never have a script for my videos, but I do often have a list of bullet points that I want to cover, and I don't have that right now. So we'll see what it is I get to. Also, for those of you who have been promising my top 10 disappointments videos for the past 2 weeks, that's again going to be pushed off to next week because this is breaking news type of situation, although technically this probably does go into one of the disappointments, so to speak. So I'm gonna jump a little bit all over the place as I cover different aspects of this, but let's start with the very basic in case you don't already know, because many of you already know, many of you have been asking for this video, which is the main reason I'm doing it, because we'll come back to that in a second. But if you don't know, Final Frontier Games, responsible for a variety of games. They've done a whole lot of games over the years. Probably the most notable is Merchant's Cove, but then Coloma's been generally well received. I personally am a huge fan of Bardwood Grove, which I don't have a copy, and I don't think I'll be getting one at this point, although rest assured I like that game. I will hunt down a copy to buy or trade for or whatever. I'll figure it out. But I also understand why now I haven't got to my copy yet. Anyways, Final Frontier Games, responsible for a whole lot of games, is shutting down. Shutting down with 3 outstanding crowdfunding projects, of which backers of those projects currently have no current means to get their hands on it. That's not to say there might not be any way at all. Specifically, Merchant's Cove seems like it, from what I gathered, Merchant's Cove seems like it might be physically existing in a way that maybe you'll be able to get your hands on it, but the problem is fulfillment centers have it, but, you know, Final Frontier Game has to pay their bills, so fulfillment centers might liquidate it in order to get their bills paid. These are things that have happened before with a variety of companies. From, Blacklist Games had this happen. We had Dirt from, I'm blanking on the name of the company, Holy Grail Games. That happened there too. But anyways, Final Frontier Games is shutting down. And if you have existing product that you're waiting for, you're kind of mostly out of luck on it, at least from what we know so far. I'll include a link to their update down below. They had an update on all 3 of their outstanding campaigns, calling it the Darkest Hour, which makes sense. It is. Or is it the Darkest Hour or the Darkest Timeline? I'm watching Community right now, so I'm very much in the mindset of Darkest Timeline, but it might have been Darkest Hour. Either way, Coloma has a expansion campaign that was done on GameFound. Then they have Merchant's Cove, which is done on Kickstarter, which is they have the newer campaign, and then they have the 6th Realm done on Kickstarter. All of those have updates basically saying, hey, we're really, really sorry. Also, we're shutting down. Now, that's not the update's a lot longer than that. It goes into a lot of things, covering a lot of different notes. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit today, talking about thoughts, opinions, the crowdfunding landscape to a certain extent, because there's a lot to go over here. But the main reason I debated whether to do this video or not is because the question I had for myself is, to what end? To what end? What's the value add of doing this video? I had a lot of people commenting on both on, members over on Patreon, Ko-Fi, as well as, on my YouTube video, obviously left, right, and center. I had 2 people to reach out directly asking me, well, more than 2 actually. I'd reach out directly asking me if I'm going to be doing a video on this. And instinctively, it's like, yeah, well, I mean, it's crowdfunding news to a certain extent, and I do cover tabletop news, but also, if I'm going to cover this, I'm also going to cover it from all sides, which includes a degree of criticism around the way it shut down. And that I take more seriously. Just news. If it's just news, if it's just almost entertainment to a certain extent, keeping you informed, that doesn't necessarily need more of a reason than just keeping you informed. But if I'm going to talk about this, there's also a degree of criticism towards Final Frontier, and I'm very, very mindful that criticizing a company when they've just had to close their doors, let their employees go, it's a very weighty moment. It's a weighty moment. This is going to follow some of the same notes we've covered in a variety of these types of circumstances. The backers who have lost their money are definitely victims here. There's no question. You are the wronged party. At the same time, it is also true that people have lost their jobs. Designers who have worked with Final Frontier Games no longer have that connection. People who I don't even know what unplanned games they have had. I don't know which designers have spent time, effort, and energy towards future publications, future games that may never come to pass. There are a lot of victims in this situation, and a lot of people who are not to blame, and a lot of people who are not to blame who will lose more than the games they backed. Also, at the same time, there are people who backed anywhere from 1 to 3 of these games and are not getting those. Individual people could be out hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Like, I haven't done the exact math, but I would say $500 to $600. I'm sure there's some of you out there that are out $500 to $600 because of this situation. It's never fun when this happens. It's never fun. And I beg all of you who are victims in this, again, there's going to be different categories, and people who are watching this in general, people who are mindful of the crowdfunding landscape, and people who back their games. Anyone who backed any of these games and are not getting them, both things are true at the same time. This is always the case whenever we cover these conversations. You are the wronged party. You have backed something with an expectation of getting it, an expectation that was reasonable, and through a whole lot of circumstances outside of your control, you're not getting that thing. You are the wronged party. Also, yelling at the people who didn't deliver these games isn't going to make anything better for you, and it's just going to further add pain to people who are going through a harder time than you probably are. That is not an excuse. It is never an excuse for their actions or anything that led them here. It's more of just a general call to, if you're going to, any actions you take, to a certain extent, try to think through, what value does this add? What value does it add to you, to anyone, to the ecosystem, before you engage in something that might not even help you and might simply add more pain to others? That's part of why I debated whether to even do this video, because like I said already, there's some degree of criticism around how things went down on the way out, and if I'm going to talk about a subject, I'm going to talk about all aspects of a subject. I'm not gonna pull punches, so to speak, because I don't think that, I'd rather not talk about something. It's no different than reviews. I'd rather not cover a game I didn't like than cover a game and say I liked a game that I didn't like. Not talking about things is one thing, talking about them, if I'm going to talk about them, I'm going to talk about them the way I really feel. So, a lot of different things to cover here. Let's start with my criticism part to get that part out of the way. On the way out, Final Frontier Games, they basically kind of started their update with blaming CMON for not paying their bills. From the update, and again, make sure to read the update because I'm not doing this verbatim, but make sure to read the update. They basically said, hey, they engaged in a partnership with CMON around localization of some of their games. CMON, generally their terms would be that they pay 50% upfront and 50% upon delivery, or upon something, 50% later. And CMON requested a change in the terms and said, hey, we'd like to pay 100% later. Could you just go ahead and print the games and whatnot? Which means Final Frontier Games engaged with the printing of the games in theory. They didn't really say in the update exactly what has and hasn't been printed outside of Merchant's Cove. So I don't know to what extent this printing, I don't know if other games have been affected. It kind of sounded like only Merchant's Cove has been printed and produced and the rest not. That's what it sounded like. And they said they're so excited to work with CMON, that's a giant in the industry, that they went ahead with those terms, even though those are not great terms and a little risky for them. And then, for some period of time that I don't know the exact amount, they're saying that CMON is no longer answering, no longer engaging, not responding to things, and that they're not hearing from CMON at all, which is definitely a warning flag we're going to get to soon. We're definitely going to get to that. Also, make sure to check out Board Game Wire. I know they reached out to CMON. They didn't get a response yet, but there might be updates there as well. And if I see anything, I'll post a pinned comment to this video. And we'll cover the CMON stuff soon. But they talked about how, because of that, and they kind of laid a lot of blame on that. They kind of made it sound like this lack of response from CMON is like a huge part of why they're shutting down. Now, they talked about other things, and they specifically made sure to like note that there's not to like only say it's CMON, but they kind of seem to indicate like a big degree of blame from CMON. It was like the first thing in the update, and a whole section later down, a lot of blame is being placed on CMON here. They talked about other things. They mentioned game trays, and like they're like not blaming them, but like things also took longer there, and problems and issues are there. They talked about other partners who are supposed to do localizations, and again with a degree of hey, it's not their fault. Timelines get messed up, but then we have to do it ourselves, and that incurred costs. They talked about Pandemic as well. That one I'm more cool with. Pandemic is like kind of a blameless victim, so to speak. It's an easy way to put blame at the feet of something else without having a party that you're pointing a finger at. And none of this, the idea that there are so many different cascading effects that lead to a company shutting down, that is very, very true. There's lots of different things that will happen along the way. The thing that was kind of notably absent from the update, in my opinion, is it kind of seemed like there was a lot of pointing fingers at circumstances and other companies, and very little internal pointing fingers. And we have to keep in mind that the last 3 campaigns they have between Sixth Realm, Coloma, and Merchant's Cove, the public-facing number of what they raised is $1.4 million in those 3 campaigns. That's the public-facing number. I say public-facing because that doesn't account, any additional late pledges, any additional shipping fees, all those other behind-the-scenes numbers. That's only the public-facing numbers. And on that $1.4 million, it sounds like they only produced Merchant's Cove and didn't finish shipping it and all that. So that's a whole lot of money. It's a whole lot of money and a whole lot of blame being placed at the feet of other people and entities and all that. Make no mistake, I'm sure that CMON has had an issue has had a part in why Final Frontier Games is shutting down. I'm sure game trays and the localization and COVID, I'm sure all these things had a part. I wish the update, even if the update chose to go through all of those things, including the blame on CMON, we'll come to that soon, I wish it had felt less like the blame was being pushed primarily on others and more almost a larger degree of recognition of what led them here, with a degree of like, hey, these are the straws that broke the camel's back. Like almost like literally could have and should have said, not to say it's just this, but this is the straw. Like had you said all the exact same things in the update, but had you just said, not that it's CMON's fault, but it is the straw that broke in the camel's back, that would almost be enough. Versus the way the update came across, it did come across as a lot of blame, including on Tariffs, by the way. Tariffs was and will be, I guess, the new reason to blame for when things go wrong, just like COVID was for a while. And don't get me wrong, COVID absolutely was a huge factor. COVID and the freight prices and last mile shipping and all these things absolutely were a huge factor in why companies had speed bumps and issues and some shut down. But it also becomes a convenient scapegoat for when a company is having enough problems. And I don't know anything about the behind the scenes from Final Frontier Games. I want to be very clear, this is all speculation from what we can see and what we do know about the industry in general, but I don't know the inner workings of Final Frontier Games, and I like the people at Final Frontier Games. I know the people. I have had direct correspondence, communication, video calls. I have talked to the people at Final Frontier Games, and I feel incredibly bad for everyone there. That's the hard part about why, that's the part of why I didn't want to cover this, is because it's not fun to get up on camera and be publicly critical of someone who you actually like, people and a company you like. It's not fun. I have to sit here and know full well that any of the people on their team might watch this video, but the flip side of that is not engaging with that just because I don't want to do it feels like me picking and choosing what things I cover in the crowdfunding space, which feels disingenuous and wrong to you. So it's not fun there. Tariffs, I'm trying to keep my train of thought here. There was a lot of blame put on a lot of different things, and I am certain that all of those things played a part in why Final Frontier Games is shutting down. Also, $1.4 million raised on one campaign produced and not delivered feels, and again, 1.4 is the minimum. There's probably a whole lot more as far as the post-late pledge funding and shipping and all of those additional things. And that feels like we're really not getting the whole story. We're getting the various final straws that broke the camel's back, with an undue amount of responsibility being placed on those final straws that broke the camel's back. And I think that's not fair to those final straws, and I think there's a degree of trying to present a narrative in a way that garners the maximum sympathy and the minimal amount of responsibility. And I say this with a tremendous amount of sympathy for Final Frontier Games. For me, a company could do a whole bunch of things wrong, completely fail, and I still would have sympathy. It is hard to run a company. It is hard to run a business. It is hard to be responsible for the well-being of others who are living under your paycheck. Life is not simple. Life is not easy, and I think I have a large degree of understanding for when things go wrong in life. But I also recognize that not everyone does. And so to that end, there is a degree of safety in presenting the narrative that you feel most excuse my language, I'm gonna swear here, but excuse that, presenting the narrative that most covers your ass. CYA, cover your ass. And I think that, to a certain extent, is what happened here, and I don't think that's fair to the other people, and I think for those looking at the situation, it's worth understanding that a situation like this does not happen merely because of the aspects presented in the update. There's a lot more going on here, and like companies that have happened this beforehand, there's a degree of an ongoing trail of trying to constantly stay a little bit ahead of the problems, and the nature of crowdfunding does allow for that to happen in many situations, and allows for things to turn around in many situations, and allows for many things. And to be very clear, not every company that has multiple campaigns is running in any sort of ongoing deficit where you're just waiting for the penny to finally drop. Many are doing so responsibly, and many are trying to stay ahead of the bad news. And unfortunately, when that happens, when it happened with Holy Grail, when it happened with Mythic, when it happened with Final Frontier, when those things happen, it does result in people kind of holding the bag on a bunch of projects that you may have backed. And all of it sucks. All of it royally sucks. Let's talk about the CMON part of it, because the CMON part is relevant. I have no doubt, between the recent news, and again, I'm saying this with no actual knowledge of what's going on in terms of the inner workings of CMON, but there have been multiple things that have been reported about and talked about as far as CMON goes, in terms of they reported, again, you can check out Board Game Wire, many other sites, I like Board Game Wire. You can check out Board Game Wire for a few articles about their recent issues. They're anticipating a loss this year. Supposedly they still have cash reserves. Supposedly, a big part that stuck out at me with the story is supposedly they still do have a decent amount of cash reserves from what I understand. And so yes, you have a loss, but you have cash reserves, so what happened here? I don't fully know. But then on top of all these things, they were frozen under the Hong Kong Stock Exchange because of late reporting of the financials, which again, not great looking. And then you have this situation which doesn't look good. It really doesn't look good to have a situation where they're not responding or engaging with a partner that they first asked for revised terms on and then stopped responding in general. That does not look good. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no way around it. It doesn't look good. I don't know what it actually means as far as CMON goes. I am sympathetic to Final Frontier in this aspect too, by the way. When someone doesn't pay their bills, when someone stops responding to emails, it's not fun. It's a sucky situation, and if you're financially on the line for it, we had at Board Game Co, we had one publisher that paid for a video and the sponsored content for a crowdfunding campaign, and then just stopped responding to every single email, hasn't responded at all, ignored us, never paid. That, I'm burning up at that. I'm like, how dare you do that? I'm like, I want to sit there and post a full video calling your, I want to go out and let the world burn to show that it's not even about the money in my case. It's about the how dare you just, get the thing, you sponsor the video, you have us do the work, and then you just ghost us. That seems like I'm burning up with the sense of justice around that. And that, again, it's not even about the money in that case, in my case. I can understand, and I can be incredibly sympathetic to being Final Frontier Games, to having this print run you've committed to, paying for that, and then having the company completely ghost you, and feeling such a strong sense of injustice. And even if there was the degree of fault along the way that was their end, even if this is only the straw that broke camel's back, there's a degree of, again, a sense of justice and a financial aspect behind it. I'm sympathetic to their desire to name and shame in this update, to kind of get that parting shot, which both offers a degree of personal cover, but also is you see, this is what happens when you try to ghost us. You see, we're not going quietly into the night. I understand that, and I'm sympathetic to that. I don't know what's happening at CMON. I am very curious whether CMON will reach out and comment and engage with Board Game Wire on this. I will say the same thing about CMON that I've been saying for a few weeks now, based on the most recent updates, which a while ago, 4 or 5 years ago, there was a whole thing about CMON being in trouble and issues, and everything bounced back and everything went just fine, and they never once asked for additional money, and everything was fine. It was much ado about nothing. At the time, I said it's probably much ado about nothing, but be more careful when you back a CMON campaign. Don't back something you're not prepared to lose. That very much stands true today. I don't know what's going on there. I would be lying if I said I was not nervous at all. I'm definitely nervous. I don't want them to go under. I like their games. I like the people there. I certainly hope they are continuously able to put out the games that I enjoy. And also, again, I care about the people who are there, and I care about their jobs and all that stuff. And so I hope everything's good there. is there a degree of nervousness around their games? Yes, I think there should be. I think any company who is floating multiple campaigns, you should be nervous about what your potential liability is when you back things. And more so when there's recent drama, of which there are now 3 aspects. There's CMON's financial reporting, there's the taking off the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and now this. That's 3 things in a row that should make you a drop more nervous. I'm not saying you shouldn't back their games. I'm saying you shouldn't back their games if you're not prepared for what might or might not happen. And tariffs. Board game manufacturing, board game production is often a tighter business than it should be. The margins are thinner in board games than they are in other industries. And a lot of that is because of the degree of passion that is in this hobby. A lot of that is because of the people who are willing to work for less just to be in a space they love. And I get that so hard. Like, I took a massive pay cut to go full-time into the board game scene, and I am very grateful that I did because I like it here. It's so much more fun working in a space you love. But that also means that other people are doing the same thing. They are working for less money than possibly they should in order to do something that they love and that they enjoy. This is true in other hobbyist scenes as well, by the way. In lots of hobbyist spaces, there's a degree of less profit than you possibly should have because people are willing to do it for less for the sake of being involved in the thing that they love. But it means that when things get a little tough, lots of things can be a bit more prone to failure. There's not enough padding to make sure that everything goes smoothly. COVID, as much as COVID was and will continue to be a scapegoat for some companies who mismanaged things, COVID also was a genuine reason why companies had to either ask for more money or in some cases shut down. When the margins are thinner than they should be, anything that pushes at those margins puts you in a bad place. That's equally true for tariffs, although I don't think that tariffs are yet the reason for anything yet. Tariffs can be and may well be, if they continue 145% tariff, when you're looking at companies, and you're looking at companies who have already committed to producing the thing. I know Price, the COO of Cephalofair, has been going left, right, and center talking, I think COO, definitely something, might be CFO, CO, somewhere high level. Price Johnson, Cephalofair, has been making the rounds at every single news network trying to talk about the impact, where they're looking at like a $1.8 million bill on the things that they already produced. They already charged people, they already produced it, and now they might be looking at a $1.8 million bill because of these 145% tariffs. Those things will have ongoing impacts. Make no mistake, if tariffs continue, it will result in further news like this. Specifically, because there's kind of 3 different umbrellas. There's the people who got things in before tariffs, the people who are going to be able to price their games based on tariffs now, which even now it's impossible to do so because no one knows if they're going to stick around for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month or a year. No one knows. And then the worst category is the people who sold you the game already, may have already produced the game, and they're going to be hit with those tariffs, and they couldn't have known or adjusted in any way, shape, or form. And their options are going to have to be to either ask you for more money, to suck up those costs when and where they're able to, or to possibly go under. Tariffs will be the result of more bad news. What that bad news looks like, I don't fully know. But if they stay around, they will be the result of more bad news. But I also think it's a little premature just yet. CMON has a whole bunch of campaigns on the water. Those campaigns may well be hit with tariffs. What they plan on doing about that, I don't know. But they're not yet the impact. That impact has not yet hit anyone. That impact is coming very soon. It's a slow-moving hammer on the way to knock a few heads, but it hasn't quite hit yet. To be very clear, there are some people who have had to pay tariffs already, but I'm not personally aware of anyone at the 145% level. There's some companies that have had to pay smaller amounts when it was at the 20 or the 54, which it's crazy to call them smaller now, but those are in place. But so for the most part, tariffs will be the result of bad news, but is not yet there. I think tariffs, like COVID, like CMON, like game trades, like everyone, is to a certain extent a convenient scapegoat, a common enemy, well, mostly common enemy to be able to blame things on, not to minimize their impact. That impact will be in place, but I don't believe it was an impact for Final Frontier yet. I'm not saying it's not an impact in their decision making. There could be a degree of sense of deflation. If you sat there, if you survived COVID, if you've managed to keep going one day after another, if you've managed to continuously outpace the bad news, and then you see something like tariffs, could it absolutely be a moral deflation? Something that you just kind of give up and you're saying, I just can't outrun the bad news anymore? That's possible. but the financial impact of it is not yet an impact here, in my opinion, from the sidelines. So as far as Final Frontier games, I wish them all the best. Again, I know the people there. I like the people there. I am sorry for those who ran the company. I'm sorry for those who worked for the company. I'm sorry for the designers who worked with them on games, both past, present, and future. I'm sorry for the backers who aren't going to get what they paid for. It's a sucky situation. I have been there with games before. I have paid money for games that I did not get. It has happened. There was a long time. There was a period of years where I said I've managed to not have a single canceled or failure. Like, I did pick campaigns responsibly when I backed them. But then once COVID hit, that's when my kind of track record disappeared, and games that I backed no longer showed up. I mean, there's still Storm Thunder. I paid everything for Storm Thunder. I'm like $900 in on Storm Thunder, got the full sun wash, all that stuff. I have no clue if I'll ever see that. The good news about Storm Thunder, if you want a slight amusement, is there's a possibility that one will be in production so long that by the time it shows up, the tariffs will no longer be in place. It might be the next administration. We have no idea. So, like, Storm Thunder's got that going for it. But yeah, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. There's no question about it. But also at the same time, before you vent, before you rage, before you go online in any capacity and threaten, death threats should be off the table, by the way. I know that to most of you that's obvious. Unfortunately, it's not always obvious to everyone because they have happened in this industry before and they will happen again. But just try to think, what are the options you actually have and what will actually add good to the world? Yes, something sucky happened to you, but just because of that doesn't mean that yelling or shouting or being aggressive will get you any further, unfortunately. And if it will, that's a conversation. I think in many cases it won't, so why bother? As far as CMON, back responsibly. Don't back things that you're not prepared to lose right now. They're definitely, again, several bits of bad news. You have to be mindful of that. Don't stick your head in the sand. Be aware, be mindful, and back responsibly. And then as far as crowdfunding in general, I hope the tariffs go away. Because it's a separate conversation as to, like, are these tariffs good, not good? Will they help bring jobs back to America? Are they a negotiation tactic? We've done that on several videos. For the record, for those of you who've missed those videos, for the record, I'm very, very against tariffs. I think they're a bad idea. I think they're bad for America. They're terrible for this particular industry. But I'm not going to heavily get into that. I just want to make my opinion clear. But sure, we can have separate conversations as to whether it's good for America. But there's no question that it's terrible for the tabletop industry. It may well represent the death of many companies. It may well represent a change in, Carbon Edison, I'll try to link to it below. They just did a massive poll around it, talking to various publishers about, what does this mean? How are you going to pivot? For the most part, it's going to mean less games, smaller games, and more expensive games. That's the outcome. Based on publishers saying, hey, here's our plans to weather this. It's fewer games, smaller games, and more expensive for smaller. You're going to be paying more to get less in the games you get. That's just how things are going to work as long as these tariffs are in place. To anyone who chooses not to back for the next several weeks or months until things stabilize, I get that. That makes sense. And again, as always, back responsibly. When you have something like COVID, when you have something like tariffs, which is crazy to equate the two, but the impact to our industry, I'm not sure which one's worse. I'm not sure which one's worse as far as the impact to the industry. The impact to the world, COVID's worse. The impact to this industry, tariffs may well be worse. I'm not quite sure. It's going to be messy. If these don't go away, it's going to be messy out there. Try to live with compassion, even towards the people. Try to live with compassion, even towards those whose actions may have led you to experience a loss. This is not a get out of jail free card. This is not asking you to ignore any possibilities you have at your disposal. If you have possibilities at your disposal, by all means, take advantage of them. But if you don't, there's no benefit to simply adding negativity to the world. It sucks. I hope I don't have to do a whole bunch of videos like this. I hope I don't. This one feels like a big one. It feels like it's been a while since the last big company had a cascading degree of failure. Like, Mythic's obviously one of the biggest and worst in their space. Chai Tifa too. People tend to have a special degree of hate in their heart towards that campaign, even though it's only one campaign. And I get it, by the way. I'm right there with you, unfortunately. But then as far as these snowballing company failures, there's Mythic, there's Holy Grail, and now there's Final Frontier. And Lord knows I hope that the list stops there. I like the hobby that we are in. way too much for me to be able to tolerate the degree of negativity around things like this. I just want the best for everyone, and I wish I could snap my fingers and make that happen, but life's not that simple, unfortunately. So the best I can do is to try to talk about things as level-headed and as calmly as possible, and hope that in some way there's a positive impact to the things that I do in the space. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everyone involved in this situation. Anyways, it feels like as good a place to end this as any. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I wish this were a better video today. And until next time, I hope you have a good one.